The metallic groans of Flight 372's engines were a low and constant presence, a steady vibration felt through the floor and seats, a sound that had lulled most passengers into a state of comfortable semi-consciousness. But not Vanessa Peters. At 15, she sat glued to the window, not for the view of the clouds, but for the intricate way the wing and its massive engines cut through the sky. She wasn't just a passenger, she was an observer, a student of the mechanical symphony happening just outside her window. As the plane banked gently over the vast blue ocean, the steady hum of the right engine suddenly faltered. It wasn't a loud noise, but a distinct change in pitch, a flat, rattling cough in the middle of a perfect chord. Vanessa's head snapped forward, her hand instinctively gripping the armrest as if she could feel the change in its metallic bones. This was not normal. This was a warning. In the cockpit, Captain Rodriguez's hand shot out to the instrument panel, his knuckles white against the dark plastic. "Alex, did you hear that?" he said, his voice clipped and sharp. His co-pilot, a young man named Alex, was already checking the gauges. "I heard it, Captain. Engine 2. We have a momentary pressure drop, but it's stabilized." The words were meant to be reassuring, but the tone of urgency in Alex's voice said otherwise. In the main cabin, a stewardess with a practiced smile walked down the aisle, but her eyes darted nervously between the flickering overhead lights and the faces of the passengers. "Just a little turbulence, folks," she announced, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. The plane shuddered again, more violently this time, and a drink cart rattled ominously. A woman clutched her child, and a nervous whisper rippled through the rows. The engine coughed again, a deep, unsettling roar, and the entire plane lurched to the right, a physical jolt that sent a tremor of real fear through the cabin. The flight was no longer a serene journey, it was an angry, unpredictable beast, and everyone on board could feel it. Suddenly, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, his tone strained, devoid of its usual calm assurance. "This is your captain speaking. We are experiencing a technical issue with our right engine. We are rerouting to the nearest airport. Please remain calm." It was the standard announcement, the words designed to soothe, but the fear in the captain's voice was the only sound people truly heard. A baby began to cry, and a few passengers started to pray openly, their murmured prayers a desperate counterpoint to the roaring wind outside. The plane's angle shifted, a distinct downward tilt that tightened Vanessa's stomach. She knew what that meant. The pilot was trying to maintain control, but they were losing altitude. The rerouting was a hope, a gamble against a failing engine that sounded like it was about to tear itself apart. In that moment of shared terror, a feeling of cold, hard resolve washed over Vanessa. The fear was still there, a knot in her gut, but her mind was already at work, sifting through the thousands of hours she had spent in her father's flight simulator. She knew the feel of a plane with a failing engine. She knew the sound, and she knew what came next. She needed to act. The stewardess, her composure completely gone, sprinted down the aisle, her face pale with terror. "Is there anyone who can help? A mechanic? An engineer?" she shouted, her voice thick with desperation. The passengers looked at each other, their faces filled with a helpless panic. Then, from a window seat in the back, a small figure rose. All eyes turned to Vanessa, a black girl with braids and an expression of fierce concentration. She pushed past a row of stunned passengers, her movements quick and decisive. "I'm a pilot," she said, her voice cutting through the panic with surprising clarity. "I can help." The stewardess stared at her, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and frantic hope. "Follow me," she said, and without another word, Vanessa followed her to the front of the cabin, the sounds of terror fading behind them. When the cockpit door opened, the air inside was thick with the smell of sweat and ozone. Two men, their faces slick with sweat and etched with lines of profound stress, were hunched over the controls. The instruments glowed with a chaotic cascade of warning lights. The pilots, veterans of the sky, turned to see who had come to their rescue, and saw only a 15-year-old girl. The pilot, Captain Rodriguez, a man with 20 years of flying experience, watched as Vanessa's eyes scanned the instrument panel with an almost supernatural speed. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and gruff with exhaustion and disbelief. "I'm Vanessa," she replied, her voice calm and steady, as she moved toward the jump seat. "I've been training on simulators for years. I know how to handle this." The co-pilot, Alex, let out a short, sharp burst of nervous laughter. "Training on a simulator. With all due respect, kid, this isn't a game." As the words left his mouth, a new, piercing alarm blared, a sound that sliced through the tense silence. The plane lurched violently, and the cockpit was plunged into a new level of terror. The engine gauge was dropping, the fire suppression lights were flashing, and the plane was losing altitude rapidly. Vanessa didn't flinch. She pointed a finger at a specific panel on the dashboard. "The fire suppression is on an auxiliary circuit," she said, her voice clear and authoritative. "It's not responding because the main power bus is fried. You need to switch to the backup battery and activate the alternate suppression system. It's right there." Her finger indicated a switch a few inches from where Alex was frantically flipping others. Captain Rodriguez, his face a mask of weary defeat, looked from the frantic instrument panel to this small, composed girl. In her eyes, he saw not a child's bravado, but an unshakable certainty. He saw a pilot, not just a passenger. "Do it, Alex," he said, his voice a low whisper. Alex, his hands trembling, flipped the correct switches. The alarm stopped. A small green light blinked on the console. The fire was out. The plane was still a wounded beast, but it was no longer on fire. Captain Rodriguez, his face a mix of awe and profound gratitude, turned to Vanessa. "Thank you, Vanessa. What now?" Vanessa, her mind a blur of information, took a deep, calming breath. "We need to feather the propeller on the failed engine to reduce drag," she said, her eyes now closed. A mental image of her home simulator's dashboard burned into her mind. "And we need to reroute. The nearest airport is too far, and the weather is closing in. We have a better option. There's a small regional airport in the Bahamas, Nassau-Linden-Pindling. It's closer and the runway is long enough for a one-engine landing." Captain Rodriguez looked at her, his disbelief now completely gone, replaced by a deep and abiding respect. He had been a pilot for 2 decades, and he didn't have the coordinates for a small regional airport in the Bahamas memorized. This girl did. Alex, who had been watching in silent wonder, was now a true believer. He began to input the coordinates, his fingers flying over the console with renewed purpose. For the next hour, Vanessa was the calm voice in the storm. She sat in the jump seat, but she was the third member of the crew, guiding the 2 veteran pilots through the complex dance of flying a plane on a single engine. Her words were a steady stream of commands and technical specifications, a language she had learned from countless hours of practice. She spoke of flap settings, approach speed, and landing procedures with an authority that belied her age. The 2 pilots, their faces now calm and focused, listened to her, their hands moving with the precision of her instructions. They were no longer the captains of this ship, they were her students. When the plane finally broke through the clouds, the sun-drenched runway of Nassau-Linden-Pindling Airport appeared in the distance, a sight so beautiful and hopeful it brought tears to Vanessa's eyes. The plane touched down, a bumpy but controlled landing, a small miracle of physics and human will. The cabin erupted in a roar of applause and cheers, a wave of profound relief and joy. The passengers, tear-streaked and exhausted, were alive, and they knew exactly who to thank. In the aftermath, the plane was surrounded by emergency vehicles, but they were not needed. The passengers, once filled with terror, now rushed to embrace Vanessa, their words of gratitude a symphony of emotion. Captain Rodriguez and Alex, their faces now beaming, stood beside her, their silent respect a greater tribute than any words could convey. The story of the passenger girl who saved the plane spread like wildfire. News crews descended on the airport, and Vanessa, a quiet girl who had always preferred the solitude of her simulator, was suddenly the center of a media frenzy. Her story was a testament to the power of a dream, of a quiet, unwavering dedication to a passion. She had not only saved the lives of the passengers and crew, but had also proven that the dreams of a girl from a small town in Brazil could change the world. Her journey, which had started with a competition, had just begun, a true and inspiring story of a girl who, in the face of impossible odds, had taken control. If this story inspired you, Please consider subscribing to our channel for more videos that celebrate the extraordinary moments in ordinary lives. And if you'd like to support our work, please check out another one of our videos. We have a whole library of inspiring stories just waiting for you to discover. Thank you for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next video. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments below.